Good morning, Michigan. So thank you, Rob, for those warm comments and, more importantly, your incredible leadership and partnership in this work. Also, I want to extend a special thank you to our talented and committed team within the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and the nearly 100 DEI leads all across campus who bring all of our work to life. Thank you so much. So I'm delighted to have so many of you out today to help us celebrate the progress we've made in year 2 of the strategic plan, and to help us kick off to another productive and inspiring year, year 3, as it relates to the plan. So it's time to introduce our featured event. So we are thrilled to have as our keynote speaker, Diane Guerrero. Diane Guerrero is an award-winning actress who has starred in shows like Orange is the New Black, for which she received 3 Screen Actors Guild Awards, and as Lena in CW's breakout hit, Jane the Virgin. Guerrero's memoir, In the Country We Love, wonderful read, by the way, I read it in like 2 days, published by Henry Holt, details her life as a citizen daughter of undocumented parents and her years-long struggle to deal with the consequences of the broken immigration system. In 2015, Guerrero was named a White House Ambassador for Citizenship and Naturalization. She is an outspoken advocate for common sense, comprehensive immigration reform who promotes voter and civic engagement while drawing attention to the experiences of undocumented families in the United States and the impact of deportation. Moderating the discussion, we have with us Leonard Pitts, who is an award-winning journalist who writes about diversity and current affairs in his own column. Pitts was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in 1992 and a winner in 2004. In addition to a very long list of honors, which you can read in your program, in 2016, Pitts was named to the Hall of Fame by the National Society of Newspaper Columnists, which gave him the Ernie Pyle Lifetime Achievement Award. So please join me in welcoming Diane Guerrero and Leonard Pitts Jr. to the University of Michigan and to our community assembly.
Well, I guess it's on us now.
Yes.
Okay. Showtime.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to meet you. I want to begin, and let me also co-sign your book. I'll do the TV spokesmodel thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, I think you're going to be signing afterwards. Is that
I'll
right?
be signing afterwards.
Okay.
I'll be there to talk to.
Always got to do that.
Talk to me.
If you could tell us a little bit about your story. You grew up in Boston, as I recall from the book.
Yes.
And you were the child of, obviously, parents born in Colombia who came here as undocumented
Right.
persons. You could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Going to talk to people about my immigrant experience is sort of part of my gig. I started in 2016 after I decided to be open about my family's experience with the immigration system. I was born in New Jersey to my father and my mother, who were immigrants. My parents came in through a tourist visa, and like many other immigrants who came in that way, overstayed their visa, and then tried very hard to find a legal pathway for citizenship. As you know, it is very difficult. So my parents were undocumented, and I grew up pretty much in fear that they would be taken away, naturally. My parents were very open with me about the possibility of that, just because there was always conversation about their legal status at home. So it's a common misconception that people who come here and do not have legal papers do not worry about their status. They very much do and are constantly trying to find ways that they can legalize their status. So it was a topic of conversation, and I was a little girl, and I was always sort of privy to what was going on. And so I knew from a very young age that my parents weren't documented, and that was something that I sort of had to carry with me. And I also knew that I had the privilege of being an American citizen because I was born here. I was raised in Boston, Massachusetts, and we lived a normal life for the most part. I grew up in a very predominantly Black and Latino community where a lot of immigrants were living in the area. So we didn't have a lot of family. My parents and I didn't have family in Boston, but like many immigrant communities, you band together and you make a family of what is, of the people around you. So I grew up in that environment. I was always interested in the arts, and so that was part of my my journey growing up, and I certainly value the arts because it was, for me, a place that I could escape, a place that I could be myself, a place that I could be creative, away from sort of the very adult stuff that was happening at home. I was able to sort of be a kid through the arts.
You mentioned fear a moment ago, and I'd like to see if I can get you to expand on that. How does that manifest itself? In other words, I seem to remember you making the point in the book at some point that your parents lived in fear of even something like a traffic stop or things like that. So how did that fear manifest itself in their lives and in yours? Were there just things you didn't do, or authorities or systems you tried to stay away from?
We basically were taught to stay quiet and basically to fear literally everything. So a knock on the door, loud noises would scare me. So like an alarm or a simple traffic stop violation, like anything that would put my parents in the face of authority. And of course I feared being taken away from them. And so that was our reality, because you are not, if you don't have documents, then and there are no laws to protect you, then you sort of run that fear. This caused for a lot of psychological harm, I suppose. I developed anxiety at a very young age. I mean, obviously my parents were anxious all the time, and so that transferred over to me. A lot of kids of mixed status families are, some family members are documented and some families are not. And so a lot of kids who grow up in that environment usually end up having mental health issues, and certainly I was not a stranger to that.
Your family was also rife for exploitation by bosses, and if I recall correctly, by also an immigration lawyer? Yeah,
so in the quest to obtain legal citizenship or even protected status, you run into lawyers who say they will help you by helping you fill out papers and sending documents in. But some, in a community that is already very fearful, you can run into some trouble. So there were, lawyers that were faulty and would take your money. There were notarios that would scam you, and unfortunately, I experienced that with my family. We had a lawyer that was helping us for a long time, and it ended up being a very bad situation, because basically there are no, like I said, there are no laws to protect you. So this man just ran off with our savings, and we were sort of left in the same place we started. So I mean, those were a lot of things that I experienced with my family. A lot of this fear sort of didn't motivate my parents to sort of to be a little more. It was difficult. We weren't really talking about the immigration system and how it was failing this country and how it really wasn't working for anyone. We didn't talk about the visa system and how outdated it was, and sort of how difficult it was for family reunification. Those things, I mean, we were saying that they were available, but they were not.
Could you talk a little about, as I recall again from your book, that there was a traumatic day that changed everything when I think you were about 14, if I recall correctly?
Yes.
Could you talk about that day?
Sure. So I was, this was right around the lawyer situation. I was 14, and we had reached a time where my father had obtained a green card, and he had an employment card. And so we thought that things were sort of going well, but because this lawyer, you know, you're responsible for submitting paperwork, and if you know the immigration system, you know that it's very complicated. So one document that you don't send in, or you miss a signature, or you miss a meeting, that can alter your entire process. And so I was in school at the time. I went to an performing arts high school, and I went home, and both my parents were gone. And so the neighbor came and told me that they were taken away by immigration. And so I was by myself. And so at this moment, I had to act quickly and see what I was going to do. I had it very clear in my mind that I was an American citizen and that I was going to do everything in my power to stay here and to work here and to continue school here, because I was very much an American and felt like I needed to do that. I had to do that because in order to help my family. So we had nothing in Colombia. So I knew that my mission had to start then and there. So I called family, friends, and I was fortunate enough to have a community that respected my family, that respected me and our struggle, and took me in when I needed it most. And I was able to stay in school, and I talked to my teachers and my principal at my performing arts high school, Boston Arts Academy, and they were on board, and they helped me throughout that entire time. They helped me with counseling, and they helped me apply to college, and they of course sheltered me from so many things that could have happened to a kid who was left by themselves, especially at 14. So I had to know what it was to live without my parents from a very young age.
Now, that part of the book kind of stunned me. Was it that immigration didn't know that they were leaving you, a 14-year-old girl, suddenly all by herself? Did they not know that there was a Diane, or did they just not care? Or do you even know at this point?
I don't know, and I feel I waited around because this was sort of, my parents said, wait around because you never know, maybe someone is going to come to take you, or I also didn't want to have an experience where I was in school and authorities would come and take me. I thought maybe I would be arrested, or I would be sent away to a foster home or something. So I waited, but no one ever came, no one ever checked up, no one ever called my school or anywhere I was to see if I was okay, or if I needed to be with my parents or not. So I was sort of just forgotten. It was as if I really didn't exist in the eyes of the law, even though I was born here and I was here. But it was like sort of like their mission was done. It was they took my parents and that was it. They really didn't check up on me. So that's when my friend came in and got me.
Can you talk a little bit about the emotional toll that this took on you, your emotional health?
Sure. I mean, this being separated from your family is a huge deal. It's not something that you just experience on the day or even a few months later or a year later. It's really a lifetime of trauma that occurs to a person. I mean, I've had to work very hard to be here today because of my experiences. I don't wish any. I mean, I wish my parents would have stayed with me and we didn't have to go through this, because then life would have been a little easier and less emotionally traumatic. But it does mess with your psyche to know that that your parents are somewhere else very far away and you can't be with them. Yes, I get a lot of people saying, well, why didn't you go with your parents? Why didn't you just go back? Well, then I answer, well, go back to what? Go back to where? I've never visited Colombia. I didn't consider myself, I consider myself an American. And so there were no educational opportunities there for me unless you had a lot of money. There weren't any, there wasn't public education that was available for me. You need a lot of money there to go to a proper school and to succeed in the way that I wanted to. And I knew that if I stuck in the school that I was in the pilot school that I was in, that I would have a chance at college and that I would have a chance at a career. And so that's why I didn't go, because I also had to get to work so that I could send money home, to my parents' home, so that I could help them. And of course, as a 14-year-old, having all of these worries in your mind are going to take a toll. And so I experienced depression, anxiety, and I experienced a very hard time in my life where I thought that your self-esteem sort of is shattered. So you think you don't matter to your country, you start thinking you don't matter to your parents or your family. You start thinking that you don't matter, that you don't have a place in the world, that you don't belong here. So if your parents don't belong here and you really don't belong here, and really government has no idea that you're here, you start thinking, well, then what is the point of being here, meaning on this earth? So I had issues from the time I left high school into what people call the real world. I guess that's not the real world yet. I guess after college it's the real world. But so during college, which was a very real time for me because it was something very new that I had never experienced, and then of course after college was very tough until I got proper help. And again, mental health really wasn't discussed. It wasn't something that my community thought, or it wasn't something that my community really promoted. That mental health was necessary for you to succeed, that you needed mental health in order to get to the next step in your life. And no one's telling you that all of this bubbling up is going to catch up to you. I mean, I was voted most bubbly or happy-go-lucky in school, which is really funny because I was so sad. But that's why I'm an actress, I guess. So I was certainly trying to cover up those feelings of insecurity and nothingness, I guess. So I was very active. I mean, look, as a kid, I've always been that way. I've always tried to make a negative situation into a positive one. So, and I've done that by participation and by reaching out to my community, which is why I tell people all the time, it's like, don't be afraid to reach out, because if you want to live in a place where you know that if you're in trouble that you can reach out to your neighbors and ask for help and that they can do the same, then, I mean, it's the only way that we can succeed. None of us would be here if we weren't helped by someone. I mean, sure, look, you work really, really hard to be here, and that is you. You have that will, but your community is there to help you. And that's what I did when things got really bad. I sought help, and it's the only reason I'm alive today is because I went and I saw a therapist, and I did something about it.
If your parents had wanted to come here legally, what would the process have been and how long would it have taken?
Visas to countries like my parents usually take up to 15 to 20 years to 25 years to get a visa. You can get an employment visa, which is usually offered to more of like scientific jobs or medical jobs and things like that. But we have that here. Actually, the most what this economy depends on is more low-skilled work, which is why you see so many people from other countries coming here and working low-skilled jobs, is because in reality, we actually need more of that. I mean, just think about the food on your plates. The second way you can come here is through family reunification, which often doesn't, it's very limited to the number of family members.
Right.
And of course now with this administration, that's even less. But that's also very hard. And then the third and fourth is through asylum and refugees, which, as you see now with the children at the border, that's also sort of non-existent. Because that also isn't really a way to come here.
So if you decide,
You basically can't come.
yeah,
You cannot come.
I was going to say that if you decide you want to have a better life and get a visa and go to America and have a better life, you better make that decision by the time you're 5, 6 years old.
You have to start at 5, submit your paperwork.
Yeah.
Get yourself a real good lawyer, and be prepared to speak to a judge.
Yeah.
When you're caught at the border or something. Yeah, it's not as easy as you would think. And of course, for countries, you cannot come here like like let's say you're impoverished. That is not reason to be a refugee. But you have people from El Salvador running away from their dire situation over there, which has become very violent, and of course Syrian refugees, and that that is no longer a thing. You can't come here as a refugee. So those are the ways, and so my parents came on tourist visas.
Okay. You mentioned the present administration. If you could talk a little bit about this current anti-immigrant fervor that we're going through in this country, and how that when you hear the kinds of things that are being said, how that sounds particularly to you as the American-born child of children of parents who were,
Sure. Well, that was really the reason why I even decided to share my story, was because in 2015 I began to hear this current administration sort of, I guess what their campaign strategy, I suppose, was to attack communities that were different from them, but especially the immigrant community. So I wasn't involved in politics. I didn't even want to think about the word immigration because it caused me so much anxiety and so much pain. So I really wasn't, I wasn't thinking that I was going to do this. But in 2015, I heard a lot of the commentary and saying my community were rapists and murderers and that were coming here to steal jobs. And so knowing that I came from a community, this same community that was being referred to in this way, I thought this isn't right, because I know the community that I come from. My community is hardworking, my community is loving. And also, you're talking about my parents, and they are none of those things. And so I decided, because of the platform that I had at the moment, because I had managed to get myself a job on television, and that television show managed to be popular, and I was being seen for the first time in a way that I had never been seen. So I was being asked questions about who I was, what I believed in, who my parents were. And so I began sort of like I always had. I started to lie about myself. and say that I was happy and that my parents were not here, but not because of reasons like deportation, but because they decided to just leave on their own. And I felt really wrong about that, knowing that my community was being attacked, knowing that deportations were at an all-time high, knowing that family separation is a very serious thing and is lifelong damaging. So I decided that I would share my story. And so you see this just, I mean, go on Twitter, right? You see the negative comments that are being thrown around about the immigrant community. You see children at the border held in cages. Just a few hundred children were actually just transported to Torino, Texas, with no educational opportunities and no legal representation. And so you see that there's this anti-immigrant fervor just through that. Just through seeing, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the images of children being ripped away from their parents, and then even that reunification process, after they deport the parents, these kids are still in these camps, in these cages. And so how do they get back together with their parents? It is something that the administration simply does not care about.
Okay. I get the sense you see yourself in
Sure,
them.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that when I saw those images, when I heard those screams, I just remember my experience seeing my parents being taken away in handcuffs and seeing my mom actually being taken away in this van to the airport. And remember her face in the little, through the little caged window. So yeah, so those, when I see those children, I understand. And it's not like every kid who has been separated from their family has the luck that I've had. I'm one in a million, really. I don't even know how I got here, but I know that I was resourceful. I had a great community, but I mean, any wrong turn and I could have been in jail. I could have been in the streets. I could have been dead. So this isn't a normal case. This isn't, something everyone experiences. Right. So I think that that's why I have been so interested in sharing my story of, first, I was able to get through this. So I want to serve as encouragement and as an example for people going through the same thing, for thinking that they don't belong here or feeling like they don't matter. And then I also want to set an example for people who feel like I don't belong here and that I don't matter, to say that I do matter and that I am a hard worker and I am civically engaged and I do care about this country. And these are most of my peers.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't know how to stop a sentence.
That's okay. That's
Make sure your teachers teach you that. Your professors, I mean, teach you that.
The University of Michigan is unique among higher education institutions for having sort of this 5-year diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan, and we're sort of meeting here at the midpoint in year 3 or beginning year 3.
Yes.
How do you stay motivated and give us some advice, give the university some advice for staying motivated in the long game of diversity work? What are the things that we can do? It's so easy to look at what's right in front of you,
right.
But there's sort of a long-term strategic thing here, and it's maybe hard to stay motivated.
Well, it's hard to stay motivated just doing anything, yeah. Right? But just know that we are looking at a long-term fix, and it's important just to know that it takes work. It just takes work. Nothing comes easy. And that's sort of how I feel when we hit roadblocks. I mean, we saw right now that with what happened in Washington just a couple days ago, that that this fight is intense, that we cannot simply back down because we keep seeing roadblocks, and we are stopped from wanting to see change. Change doesn't come easy, so I recommend that whoever is championing this to keep on doing what they're doing, and for others to get on board. And you need help, right? Just like we need help right now, and we've seen that we can't just leave it up to other people to decide for us. We can't just leave it to other people to do the work for us. We are part of this community, and therefore we have a responsibility to do this work. That's how I feel right now with upcoming elections. And I mean, we have this history in this country of, only a certain amount of people voting, and young people especially kind of leaving it up to the adults. But it's really our future that we need to think about. So we need to be participating as much as other people are who have been voting for a very long time.
I had so much more I could go to, but I happen to see a sign out there that
There's
says,
a sign? We're
time.
done? Have we talked about everything we were supposed to talk about?
Oh, 15. Oh, okay, good. We got,
We have 15 minutes?
we have 15 minutes.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's do it. Where do I begin?
We have some questions from social media here. Your ability, this is from Hannah Hebner. Your ability to give voice to silenced stories is so powerful. Who do you still wish you could portray or interview? Whose story do you wish could be told, and who inspires you?
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I know. There goes our 15 minutes.
I know, right? Well, I began by just wanting to be seen and wanting others who look like me to see themselves in me, and for others to know that I exist. And so I started with that by just, I wanted to play the dead girl, who was being, I just wanted to be out there. And so obviously that focus has changed to telling stories that aren't really heard. Every year I think that I won't get the opportunity to actually tell stories that I want to tell, and then every year I get an opportunity to do so. I want to create my own content. I'm working on telling a story of just like a girl like me. I don't think we've seen that. So I'll start there. A year ago, I didn't think I would ever play a superhero, but I'm actually playing one right now. So that happened.
Which superhero is that?
Yeah. Well, thank you. She's obviously like mentally unstable. That's neither here nor there. But it's a new series called Doom Patrol that's being shot in Atlanta. Doom Patrol was a DC universe, DC Comics that started, I think, in the 60s, and so it's making its way back. And so I'm playing a character called Crazy Jane. Go figure. But I welcome it. I welcome it because I want to talk about mental health. I want to talk about also being a superhero, even when you have all these difficulties that you have to overcome. So, but I want to play everything. I want to play an elf because I think I fit the bill. And I just want to continue telling American stories. And I think that my story is very American, and I want to have a chance to tell it.
Okay, also from, from AJ Ashman. How do we go about bringing new voices into a movement/community, especially in college, when the day-to-day rush can drown out everything else? What lessons from activism outside of colleges can we bring to college to continually expand the number of people engaging?
Listen, use your voice. Tell stories, write. Write. I think that's what I've learned just being in this industry and actually thinking back on my college experience. And there were us who felt silenced or not motivated. I think right now we have a very special opportunity that, yes, we have a lot of information that we're getting on a daily basis, but I think that there are a lot more people in this fight, in the fight to be included, in the fight to be recognized as a human being that should be respected, that should be heard, that should be considered. And so whatever your plight is, whatever you want to see, just do it. Just start writing. Just start right here. First of all, you being here as educators and as students is already revolutionary, is already a great thing. You're already in a really good place. And so, thank you. I know. And so I think from here, you just have to reach out. You just have to look and see who else is doing that, who else is doing what you want to do, who else has a message that you want to amplify. Join forces. Unity is key. And obviously we'll see that coming up. If we don't want to be a divided country, why do we want to be divided in our workspace or in our school? I think that all you have to do is reach out and don't be afraid to use your voice, no matter how many people tell you not to. Usually obstructionists are really loud. I wonder what it would feel like if we were louder than them when we're screaming out. Everyone's like, I hate you, and you're like, I love you! Now I'm trying to make this place better. Let's do that together. Let's try to drown out the negative.
Okay, we have one more here from social media, Christian Casanova. As ICE continues to separate families and children at the border, cities, families' homes, and at my own school in California, how can I protect my students and their families? How can the University of Michigan community support and stand by our Latin community here?
I just think it should be an open conversation. We should educate ourselves and our students about what is going on right now and motivate our students if we do want to see change. It's not time to retreat, it's time to participate, right? We have upcoming elections, November 6th. I know I keep talking about that, but it is right now the only way that we can try to change the way things are. People ask me all the time, what can we do about immigration in this country? Well, first, we should try passing a bill of immigration reform. We have not tried to reform the immigration system. It is obviously not working. Obviously, we do not want, people ask me all the time, is that what you want is open borders? Who the hell wants open borders? Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need a system that works. And so right now the system isn't working. So we need to reach some sort of comprehensive immigration reform. Now, how do we do that? We do that with a House and Senate that actually cares about this issue. Because if they really care about protection and protecting US borders, then this will be an issue that would be taken very seriously. But it's not. Deporting 11 million people isn't going to work. It's not going to be good for our economy. It's impossible, basically. So get that out of your minds. That's not going to work. Where was the question?
I think you answered it and then some.
All right.
Do I have time for one more question? Okay. Let me close with this. I know that you have visited your parents' homeland a number of times now, right?
Yes.
If you could, I'd like you to talk a little bit about Colombian culture and then what that culture brings to the United States of America. Or to put that another way, what do we lose in America if we don't have all of these diverse communities, including Colombian American
You
communities?
lose all your food. You won't be able to eat a damn thing. That's what you will lose. Kidding. I'm sure all of you are doing your own farming. I'm certainly not. So growing up with my family was really interesting, even though my parents desperately wanted to be American, but were so like, because we lived in a neighborhood where we just kind of interacted with other immigrant families, so that was, their culture was really embedded in me, in my heart, my mind. We're a very happy people, very emotional. Oh my God, cry for everything. But I grew up with my heart on my sleeve, and we are a community that helps each other. So going to visit my family is really interesting. The first time I went to visit my family, of course, I told my mother not to fuss. She brought in an entire mariachi band to the airport, and here's the thing, we're not even Mexican, so I don't even know where she got a mariachi band. So that was really, and flowers and balloons and basically the entire neighborhood. I didn't know any of these people, but they all went to greet me at the airport. I love how much time these people actually had. I go to work. But that's sort of, there's a lot of love there, and a lot of people sharing what they have, even though what they have is very little. And so I learned that there, that I want to share what I have. And everything that I do, I will benefit way more if I am thinking about my community when I do it. And that's the way I want to live. I want to live by sharing what I have. That is through my experiences, through my storytelling, through what I know. I know that I was very much affected by family separation. And that is, we think that family separation only means a separation at the border or deportation, but it also means mass incarceration. It also means being separated through that. And so that is happening to our families at a scary, scary rate, and it always has been. I think this is the time to see that family separation is so many things, and that's why it affects all of us. We want better communities, we want an educated population. So I think that when we start thinking about others, I think that we will benefit in the long run, and that's what I learned from being in Colombia and being around my family, because if they don't help each other, there's no way that they can survive.
God bless America.
God bless America.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Diane Guerrero.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So we have one more treat for you. So don't leave. We have one more treat for you, but please join me again in thanking Diane Guerrero and Leonard Pitts Jr. for their wonderful exchange.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.